This morning, it's a little different. Diane, bless her heart, said, "Can I play the Battle Hymn of the Republic this morning?" I said, "Sure." And I hadn't thought about it, but I got reminded. There is a feeling out there that the church is the church universal worldwide. That's true. And that one nation shouldn't be elevated above another nation. That's also true. That God doesn't love the United States of America more than He loves any other nation out there. That's true. However, anytime you swing the pendulum too far one way or the other, both extremes are also not true. I'm an old preacher. I didn't used to say that. It's taken me a while to get my mind around that. But in 2 weeks, I'm going to be back in my home church being reminded that 45 years ago, last month, I was ordained in the ministry. And I used to think that guys like that were old. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. He says, yes, they are. And she says, yes, they are too. The only thing is, Mary and I, you need to pray for Mary and I. We haven't learned how to act like old people yet. And it's about to kill us. We had a 425-mile round trip in the last 2 days. And, you know, we slept in a nice hotel room, but that wasn't my bed. That's just not my bed. And so we did all right, but got to share Jesus yesterday morning standing at the base of a humongous cross on the top of Bald Knob in southern Illinois. We were below, quite a ways below Route 64, Interstate 64, and that's the interstate that goes across the bottom fourth of the state, and we were below that by quite a further piece. So, in fact, we could stand on that hill, probably I think the highest point in Shawnee National Forest, and we could see Cape Girardeau, Missouri. That's how far down we were. We're in the United States of America, and God has blessed us with this country. For whatever reason, God caused us to be born in this country. I used to say because He didn't think I could handle it anyplace else. Because we've got it pretty good when you look at what we have. Even the poorest of the poor have it better than most countries. I read a thing this morning where a mayor in Irving, Texas, stood up and finally said it's against the law, especially in Texas, in the United States of America, to bring another system of foreign law into our land and put it in force. When you say that you will defend the Constitution of the United States of America, that's exactly what you're saying. And so because of that, we will not have Sharia law courts set up beside our courts and made as equal. That doesn't mean that we're scared of anybody. That doesn't mean that we are being bigoted or anything. It's just that this is our country, and we are set up on constitutional government. And that constitutional government came because of a Declaration of Independence that says that all men are created equal, even though sometimes we don't act like it. But at least it's written into our code of conduct that we should act like it. So I don't want to live in a country where people are automatically seen as second class because they're not of the same religion or because they're not male. I don't know why any woman would ever accept Islamic law. I don't understand. But I think sometimes people are blinded by culture, by their families, to what the truth really is, and they literally can't see what we see as being so obvious. Because it's not obvious. They haven't even been taught to think that way. I said all of that because in some churches, you don't play patriotic songs. And the Christian flag and the American flag are not present. Because we don't want to make anybody feel less than because they may not be American. And when you're living in the capital city, we're going to have a lot of people here who aren't from this country. That's a given. But you know what? When I go to your house, I don't come in and rearrange your furniture. I don't come in and tell you that we're not going to eat in the dining room. We're going to go sit in the living room and eat. I don't come in and go through your refrigerator and change your menu. I think we need to wake up and understand that that's what's going on here. People are coming to our country and they want to live like their country in our country. And I'm saying, why didn't you just stay where you were and leave us alone? That's not being bigoted. That's not being phobic anything. That's just stating the truth. And if you want to come and live in a country that was based on Christianity, and it was, don't be surprised if we put forth Christian principles. I think some of us need to stand up and start saying that. Because in most of the world, Christians are killed first. And other organizations that some of us believe in and are part of are killed secondly. Because we, for the most part, have put our trust and faith and promises on the Bible. And that'll get you killed in a lot of places in the world. So I'm just saying, it's time to realize what today is. And I can remember when it was on the day it was supposed to be before the federal government decided everybody needed 3- and 4-day weekends. Memorial Day was Memorial Day. It's kind of like people say, when's Christmas? It doesn't move. Now, because of the tied to the Jewish calendar and Passover and stuff, yes, Resurrection Day, commonly called Easter, moves around. But Thanksgiving is always the 4th Thursday of November. 4th of July is always the 4th of July. Christmas is always the 25th of December. And your birthday is always where it was. Your birthday didn't move around. I get teary-eyed this time of year because the irises and the peonies, I don't call them pinies, the peonies. I guess I wasn't fur enough of Southern Illinois to call them pinies, but they were peonies. Those things meant something. And about the same time, we had them in our yard, and my mother was proud of those. I don't know how they got there, but they were there. But you had the poppies and the irises and the peonies all come on at the same time. Now, you didn't pick the poppies because they were so fragile that they wouldn't last. But you got your Folgers or Maxwell House coffee cans, and you covered them with metal foil, and you put a little, well, we didn't put dirt in them. We filled them full of water, and you filled those full of irises and peonies, and you went to the graveyard, and you put light flowers on Grandma and Grandpa's and Uncle and Aunts and your family. Because it used to be called Decoration Day, when you went and decorated the graves of the fallen. And so it extended to our fallen family members as well. Came from a man here in Illinois, General John Logan, who's well known for Logan County, Lincoln, Illinois. He was the Union General that the Confederate widows came and asked General Logan if they could decorate the graves of their dead. And he was, I guess, so shocked that the Union people didn't ask that he said it would be extended to everybody. All of the fallen of the Civil War would be honored. This is a day for those who have fallen, those who didn't come back. This isn't the day for those who came back and lived their life and died a veteran, and that's important. But this is for those who did not come home. I guess one reason why the poppy was so central is I remember having to learn in school in Flanders fields, the poppies grow, row upon row, Flanders field. Because over there in France, actually Belgium, they didn't ship the bodies home. We have American crosses and stars of David all across Europe. That's one reason why, even though France doesn't like our government much, there are people still revere the United States of America because many of our dead are there to remind them daily. So it's kind of interesting that today was David and Bathsheba. One of the things I want you to take home, you may think you have done a big one when it comes to sin. All God asks is that you admit it. And with His help, try to make it right and go forward. How does that fit in with this is for you? There's a lot of people in our neighborhoods, and maybe some people in your families, and people here in Springfield, Illinois, that think that if you do bad, God throws you away. God sends you to hell. That's not what that Bible says. You have any idea what the cross means? We have crosses in a lot of our churches. We have a cross right there. It's got a crown of thorns on it. You know what that means? Yes. Bless you. Somebody taught you right. Paul, woo! You and your wife got her. Got him. Good. Keep it up. That cross means God didn't want to throw anybody away. Are you listening? That cross means God doesn't want to throw anybody away. But let me tell you something. You walk across that cross and say, I don't want any part of that, you're going to go to hell on your own and God will let you. He won't send you, but He lets you choose. That's the truth of the Bible. No, we're not in here thumping people. Sometimes I want to get their attention, but I'm not allowed to do that. A lot of people, they're just a bunch of Bible thumpers. And I'll admit, some church people are the most hateful people you'll ever meet. Thought I'd get an amen out of that. Because you probably got some names attached to that. Church people you don't want to be around. Because they're not nice to be around. That cross says God doesn't throw anybody away. And He's already paid for all the sins, even for the sinners who won't accept it. Did you hear me? He's paid for all the sin, even for the sinners who won't accept it. Jesus didn't go to the cross and say, well, Paul and Mary and Diane, this is for you, but sorry, Jerry, no way. I can do that to Jerry because Jerry is just wired a little differently. And we love him dearly. He's going to be a spark plug in the heart of this church. Already is. Even those who don't grin much do grin when you're not looking. So today we have David and Bathsheba. In the spring, when most men were off to war, and the army of Israel was in the field of battle, King David, for some reason, stayed home. Now, where's the king supposed to be? At the head of the army. But David stays home. When you're not where you're supposed to be, you can get yourself in trouble. You listening? When you're not where you're supposed to be, you can get yourself in trouble. Now over there you got to understand, they didn't have much rain, and so they were trying to keep cool breezes and everything, and everybody thinks these pergola things are a new invention. Now pergolas have been around forever. They had them on the palaces of the kings of the ancient times. David's out on his roof just looking over his kingdom, and oh my goodness, look over there. Bathsheba's taking a bath on the roof. Now, I don't know why you'd take a bath out in the open where the neighbors can see, but she is. She's not using much sense either. David goes, mighty fine. I think I'll invite her over. Was he supposed to do that? He already had at the time, I think, either 3 or 4 wives. That's the way they did things back then. Man, I can't handle one. Anyway, that's another story. Couldn't even handle one at a time. Anyway. So he asked Bathsheba over, and of course, in her mind, he's the king. So she rationalizes she has to show up. She goes over, he seduces her, they go to bed together, and they make a baby. She sends word to David, I'm pregnant. David goes, oh, what are we going to do about this? So he calls Uriah the Hittite, one of his mighty men, one of his mighty warriors, home from the battlefield, thinking that if he can get Uriah home and get Uriah with Bathsheba, then back then they didn't have DNA and all that stuff, so nobody would ever know who the baby belonged to. The only thing is Uriah was a better man than David, and he knew that he shouldn't be at home having good times with his wife when his brethren in arms are out in the privations of battle. So he refuses to go home. David gets him drunk. He still won't go home. So David knows we got a problem. Uriah won't go home to Bathsheba. What am I going to do? So he devises this plan where he's going to send Uriah back to the battlefield, and the commander-in-chief on the battlefield, I think his name was Joab. I get it mixed up every now and then, but I think his name was Joab, General Joab. And in the orders that Uriah is carrying, David tells Joab to put Uriah at the head of the attacking army. You know why? Because when you go up against a citadel, or if you're out front, who's going to get hit first? Okay? Uriah dies in battle. David's covered. Uriah's not around and the baby's to be born, so that's not my kid. So David's covered, right? Woo! Boy, this is going to work out fine. Except who knows? Who knows? God knows. Why is it that we try to hide things from God? Ever? I don't even try to hide things from Mary. It just doesn't make any sense. So it makes even less sense to hide things from God. He knows what's going on. And so he sends David a messenger by the name of Nathan the prophet. Being a prophet is something that I don't ever like doing because prophets didn't get treated very well, and prophets generally had to tell people things they didn't want to hear. And sometimes prophets were killed, they were thrown in cisterns, in mud up to their armpits and left there. That's what happened to Jeremiah. So Nathan goes in and he tells David this story. There's a rich man and a poor man live side by side, and the rich man's got multiple flocks, and the poor man's got this little sheep that's like a family pet. I mean, they dote on that little sheep like it's one of the kids, because it started out a kid. Well, lamb, I guess. Kids or goats, I'm sorry. I got to be very careful, because now all this is going out there, I got to be precise. And I said, man, he doesn't know much. Sometimes I still don't know much. So some people surprised the rich man by showing up, and he wanted to throw a banquet, but he didn't want to kill any of his sheep, so he took the neighbor's sheep and killed it and had a banquet and they ate it. When David heard that story, man, he was furious. How could somebody who had everything take from somebody who had one thing? That man ought to die. Nathan says to David, you're the man. You're the David already had multiple wives. Uriah had Bathsheba. Now, David didn't try to deny it. That was a good move. He admitted what he done. He asked God to forgive him. And God did. Scripture says that David was a man after God's own heart. And this is the man who's an adulterer and a murderer, a hitman. He hired a hitman. A baby boy was born. And immediately the baby boy became ill. David went before the Lord, tore his clothes, put on burlap sack, which was sackcloth, sat in ashes, threw dirt on his head, in intense mourning, asking the God to please, please, please. And God said no, and the baby died. David gets up, takes off his torn clothes, takes a bath, cleans up, puts on ointment, fine robes, calls to have a banquet, and the servants are just as weirded out as could be. Man, he's lost his mind. He's in so much grief, he's lost his mind. No, he didn't lose his mind. You see, David knew he was wrong. David knew he did wrong. David admitted to God he did wrong. And David knew that this was part of the punishment for his sin. And he being king, it's a national sin. You see, a lot of times people need to understand, they think that it's just their little secret, their little sin. Oh, it's not just yours. It affects your family. It affects your extended family. It affects your community. It affects the nation. It's not just you in your selfishness being affected. You see, sin isn't done in a closet. Sin isn't done in private. Sin doesn't just affect the person involved. In this case, it affects David, it affects Bathsheba, and it causes the life of his son. But one of the messages that David says to them in chapter 12, verse 22, they said, when your son was alive, you fasted and wept. But now that the child's dead, you get up and eat. This is how we handle grief. And it's even better with Jesus. This is Old Testament handling of grief. But it's even better with Jesus. David said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, and I thought, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me and let the child live. But now that he's dead, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? What's the answer? Good. You know those little guys are listening. No, can't bring him back. So what do? I realize I can go to him, but he can't come back to me. So when something like death comes into the family, what do? You decide you can't change anything. You decide you can't fix anything. You decide that they're not coming back. And you decide you're not going to ruin the rest of your life. You're going to honor their memory by living. Did you hear me? You're going to honor their memory by living. living well, living better. And so, all of those flag-decorated graves, those men and women left their families for a time, not realizing they were leaving their families, period. And that's what we remember. Oh, how we'd like to talk to them one more time. Oh, how we'd like to hug them one more time. We'd like to sit down and eat a meal with them one more time. Laugh at their corny jokes one more time. But that's not to be. Not here. They can't come to me, but I am going to them. Let's stand and sing.